Welcome to Healthy Buzz, the podcast for women who are craving honest answers in a supported community. Hosted by Brandy Homerding, a certified nutrition therapy practitioner who believes your body isn't broken, but the narrative around women's health is. Each week, we're diving deep into holistic health topics, challenging the one-size-fits-all approach, and empowering you to trust your own informed intuition. Get ready to feel seen, supported, and seriously informed. This is Healthy Buzz, where collaboration meets unfiltered transparency in women's health. Welcome to another episode of Healthy Buzz. Today, I am joined by Daina Rasutis of Table to Crave to unpack the relationship between gut health and acne. From civil engineer to nutrition therapist master, Dina utilizes her scientific background to implement a bio-individual approach to nutrition. Dina helps like-minded, health-minded women who want data-driven solutions for consistently clear skin and better gut health so that they can feel confident again. She works with clients to figure out what foods are right for their bodies and utilizes targeted lab testing to identify internal triggers. With simple, sustainable action steps, Dina helps clients easily maintain optimal health from the inside out. Welcome, Dina.
Thanks for having me, Brandy.
Yes, I'm so excited to talk about this topic. It's one that we haven't talked about yet on Healthy Buzz. And I think it's so important when we talk about gut health. It's something I'm very passionate about. And I would love to hear about your story, your journey. How did you get involved with focusing on gut health and acne?
So it was a roundabout journey, as it is for many of us in the holistic nutrition space. So growing up, I had, decent skin as a teenager. It wasn't horrible, wasn't great, but I never really paid attention to it. And I actually studied civil engineering, so I'm from a very different background. Got my master's degree in civil engineering, thought I was going to work with the environment, and I was burnt out from school, so decided to work in the restaurant industry. And as I was working in the restaurant industry, I just got really more interested in food, started experimenting with food, especially because I was struggling with health stuff. So my acne had gotten worse, and I was in my early 20s. I had horrible digestive issues. I was like the person in college chugging Pepto-Bismol because I had such bad acid reflux, and my energy was horrible. Like I could not get through a movie ever. My boyfriend was so mad at me for not being able to stay awake. Something was wrong. I was in my early 20s. I should not have been feeling that way. So started experimenting with food and realized that food actually makes a difference in my skin. And I got really interested in this. So I thought, oh my gosh, I can actually change things in my body by changing my diet and nutrition. Thought I might go back to school to become a dietitian, realized that just didn't vibe with me. It just was not a holistic approach, which is what I was looking for. Ended up going to school to become a nutrition therapist master instead. And then during my journey of being a student there, learning more and more about the science of holistic nutrition, realizing that actually gut health was massively important, worked on my own gut health. And then lo and behold, after being able to put myself on a protocol, figure all that out, my acne went away. So that was kind of how I got involved with nutrition, gut health, acne, realizing there's such a deep connection there. And I love working with women who struggle with skin conditions because I totally understand what they're going through. And I know that there's a solution. It doesn't have to be creams and pills and all the stuff that you're advertised all the time.
Yeah. And if anybody's watching the video, you will see that Dina has very glowing skin. Her skin looks fantastic. And on her social media, she has shared definitely the transformation that her skin has gone through addressing what was going on underneath. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more and why food had such a profound impact on your skin?
So the first thing that I noticed what really helped was eliminating dairy. And dairy is such a controversial topic in the world of nutrition, in the world of acne. For most women who struggle with acne, it is a good first thing to avoid. So if anyone out there is struggling with acne, it doesn't have to be forever, but it is oftentimes an irritant to the gut and is just inflammatory for some people who do have gut imbalances. So that's a good first thing to try. So I would say that's a good place to start. But really what happens with nutrition is there's so many aspects of what you eat and how it affects your skin in the end. For example, blood sugar regulation. We talk about eliminating sugar if you have acne. And the reason for that is because it spikes insulin. Insulin is a hormone that triggers secretions in your skin to clog the pores and releases androgens, which are the male hormones. So it's really, food is kind of the root of it. We talk about, my hormones are messed up. Well, it's not the hormones that are problematic. The hormones are responding to something else. For example, the food that you're eating. So food is just so foundational. You can talk about liver detoxification and all these foods that maybe women with acne aren't eating enough of because they're the foods that really support liver detox. They give us the nutrients that are required for supporting liver detoxification. Food is just all the building blocks that we need to support healthy skin in the end. So it's absolutely crucial.
Yeah, I love that so much. And one thing that I know that somebody's probably going to say is like, oh, but I saw advertised on Instagram that I can do this liver detox. Can I just do this liver detox and that's going to take care of my acne? Is that what I'm hearing?
I wish it was a simple pill or a couple week protocol. And I thought that's what it was. Turns out it's not. It's months and months of healing all the different layers. Yes, a liver detox could potentially help, but there's so many more pieces to it. And that's the thing. There's not one path that I go through with my acne clients. It's working on blood sugar regulation. It's working on liver detox. It's working on stress and the nervous system. It's working on gut health. So it's like, yes, a liver detox could be a tool in the toolbox, but it's definitely not the only and last thing you're going to do. And actually, you got to be careful with any of these detoxes, whether it's, I get parasite cleanse advertisements all the time. And it's just crazy. I don't think people understand these things can be kind of dangerous. Like you can overburden your pathways. There's tons of things that can go wrong. So just caution out there for anybody who's falling for these things. You really want to be careful.
Yes. And I actually recorded a parasite episode probably about 4 episodes ago that people will be able to go back and listen to if you're interested in knowing more about a parasite cleanse. Should you do it? Should you not do it? The precautions that we definitely take as nutrition therapy practitioners around that and who we recommend that for.
Awesome. Yes. Good.
Yes. So the idea of like the gut contributing to somebody's acne could be a new concept for people because oftentimes people are just given like topical approaches when it comes to their acne journey. And, it is pretty debilitating. Some people can have really debilitating acne and like at some points you become pretty desperate and you're willing to throw anything at it to overcome this debilitating acne. Can you break down the connection between the gut microbiome and skin health?
So there's something called the gut-skin axis. So a lot of people have heard about the gut-brain axis, for example, and that's pretty intuitive. We think about the gut-brain axis of like, if you're nervous, so that nerves are in your brain, you feel butterflies in your stomach, right? There's like a bidirectional relationship between the gut and the brain. Same thing with the gut and the skin. So there's that bidirectional relationship. And actually your gut microbiome really affects your skin. And your skin also actually has a microbiome. So there's very much a connection, and people with gut issues oftentimes have acne and vice versa. So there's a lot of overlap between that. That's why really when I talk to clients who come to me with acne, almost always they have gut issues. So it's pretty crazy. So they don't really think of it as gut issues. They might be like, oh yeah, sometimes I get bloated. I'm kind of constipated. They're just so used to it. And acne is so much more important of a problem at that point that they kind of brush off the gut stuff, but it's very much connected. So there's many aspects of gut that lead to acne developing. For example, leaky gut, intestinal permeability. That's a big reason because if your gut is leaky, you're having all these undigested proteins basically seep into your bloodstream, which is causing inflammation in the body, which can appear in the skin. It could be some kind of infection. So a lot of the clients I work with might have something called like an H. pylori overgrowth, which is a pathogen that's often showing that your stomach acid is low. If your stomach acid is low, you're not digesting proteins properly. And it's that cycle of leaking into your bloodstream, undigested proteins, causing your immune system to react. It could be a yeast overgrowth. That's very common with skin conditions. So a lot of candida appears. It could be parasites. It could be bacterial imbalances. So many things can be in the gut that are off that really in the end just cause an inflammatory response in the body, which can appear as acne.
Yes, I would love to elaborate a little bit more on each of these specific ones that you called out because I feel like are so important. And I know that we use similar testing. It's something that we look at when we're looking at the testing and like what is actually going on in the microbiome. Can you speak a little bit more about the importance of stomach acid, the role that it's playing, and what H. pylori is actually doing?
So stomach acid is like your first line of defense. So when you're digesting food, it's what's breaking down protein and it's really protecting your gut from pathogenic overgrowths. So really, if pathogens do get into our gut, if they're trying to overgrow, the stomach acid is there to keep it under control. Stomach acid is something that I find that most of my clients are low in. I don't know if you find that too, Brandy.
Yep.
So what we need to do is working to make sure that that stomach acid is higher. And there's certain symptoms that can come up if your stomach acid is low. Some people will say that they just don't digest proteins well, kind of like sits in a rock in their stomach. Some people will have a lot of burping or acid reflux after meals, which can also be very much associated with an H. pylori overgrowth. Could be related to, this is also low enzymes, undigested food in the stool. So if you ever see like kale or tomatoes in your stool, which you should be looking at, by the way, that could be a sign of it. So really, if your stomach acid isn't strong, the rest of your digestive system is going to be impacted. So we really need to work on basically top down. So really, once you eat, how you're chewing your food, because in the end, it doesn't matter if your stomach acid isn't working hard enough, even if your microbiome and your colon is great, in the end, it's going to be impacted by that stomach acid being low.
Yes, such an important piece of the puzzle, and like foundationally, we're always addressing stomach acid, meal hygiene, how you're eating definitely impacts how you're going to digest and absorb your nutrients. But what about the people who are like, but I have acid reflux all the time, and so I'm on this acid reducing medication?
Yep. So that's the solution, right? The conventional solution is going on an acid blocker, because you would think that there's too much acid, right? Oh, there's too much acid. That's why I have acid reflux. It's actually much more complex than that. It's because of a signal getting improperly passed down in your body. Basically, really, acid reflux is low stomach acid. When your stomach acid is too low, your sphincter is not closed, acid splashes. So it's sort of this thing that's very not intuitive to understand. But when you take acid blockers, it's kind of just adding fuel to the non-existent fire of not having enough acid to digest your food. So short term, if someone, for example, comes to me and they had an ulcer, obviously listen to what your doctor's recommending. But in the end, those acid blockers are not doing you any good. They are lowering your digestive capacity. They're stopping you from digesting your food. And that down the road can lead to a lot of other things, overgrowth, and really nutrient deficiencies. So if you're worried about osteoporosis, mineral absorption, those acid blockers are stopping you from absorbing minerals. So there's all these side effects that aren't really talked about. And people come to me being on acid blockers for like years, and it's only supposed to be a couple of weeks that you're on one.
Yep, decades. I see decades, and I'm just like, ooh, let's do some upper gastric healing. Dinah and I cannot tell you to stop any of your prescription medications. Those are conversations that you have with your prescribing doctor, but we can work to reduce a lot of that inflammation that is going on in your esophagus. And what I find a lot with my clients too is if they've been on these acid reducing medications for decades, they're still having acid reflux. And they're like, yeah, I'm taking this medication. I've been taking it for years, but I still have acid reflux. I'm like, it doesn't sound like it's working.
Yep, exactly. Yep. So what we're doing is getting to the root cause, really getting more acid production. We want your stomach to be able to produce a healthy amount of acid.
Yes, super important. What about the yeast overgrowth? Candida is such a beast. Candida is a beast, but it's so impactful to your skin. Could you explain a little bit more about Candida and a yeast overgrowth?
So small amounts of candida are a normal commensal microbe. So it's okay to have some of it in your gut. It's not all bad. The problem is when it overgrows. Oftentimes we associate candida with antibiotic use. And that's kind of something that we all sort of know. Like, if you go on antibiotics, you start getting a yeast infection because you've disrupted that whole delicate balance of the microbiome. So we intuitively know, we've seen it happen, that wiping out the microbiome makes candida kind of grow back and in improper amounts. So candida is also something that is very much fueled off of simple carbohydrates, sugar, alcohol. And that's just so common that a lot of people are eating a diet that's a little too high in those things, which is just feeding that yeast overgrowth. There's a lot of other symptoms that you see with candida. So sugar cravings are a big one. It could be any type of yeast symptoms in the body, whether that's like a coated tongue or chronic yeast infections, athlete's foot, that kind of stuff is always a sign. Candida has a big connection with mold. So if there's, moldy things in your life, if you've been in a home with mold, that's something to look into. But I definitely see a big connection between the candida overgrowths and acne. And I don't know if it's the chicken or the egg. Is it blood sugar dysregulation that is leading to the acne and that's feeding the candida? But candida appears very often in an acne case.
Yes. And a couple other things I want to point out that can lead to a yeast overgrowth is hormonal contraceptives, using the birth control pill. Estrogen is a big driver. And so also thinking women are more susceptible because of a birth control pill, but then also, we have these hormonal fluctuations. If somebody gets pregnant, they have more estrogen. Candida really likes estrogen. And using non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, overusing those, your ibuprofen, things like that, can also contribute to a yeast overgrowth.
Yeah.
Okay, what about parasites? Because we did bring it up, and yes, there's a whole episode about parasites, but how could those be contributing to some of this gut skin axis issues?
So parasites are inflammatory in the gut. So, some will say that parasites can be commensal. We've lived with them always. Normal amounts maybe aren't going to be bad. They use parasites for all sorts of healing protocols. There's some pretty alternative stuff out there where parasites are helpful, but there are parasites that are definitely not the ones that you want to have. And in an acne case, that is something that I would definitely want to eradicate. But parasites are tricky, or they're tricky because they have multiple phases, whether they're from like the egg form, the larva, the full form. So an eradication, that's another thing. When you eradicate parasites, it's not going to be like a full moon cleanse necessarily and they're gone, because there's so many different phases of a parasite eradication. So another thing to be wary about, I don't know if you talked about that probably on your episode, of just they're not easy to get rid of either.
Yeah, totally. And they can hide, like people can have symptoms of parasites and not have parasites show up on their stool testing. And that's when we're doing the detective work and we're correlating symptoms with data to help create these individualized protocols for our clients.
Yeah, that's definitely something I've done. We can't catch all the parasites. We don't test for all the parasites. There's so many of them. But if they're screaming parasite symptoms after doing a parasite questionnaire, then it's like, yeah, there's likely parasites in there causing a lot of issues.
Hey, Healthy Buzz community. Have you been curious about using a continuous glucose monitor to unlock powerful insights to your metabolic health? Imagine seeing in real time how your body responds to different meals, different workouts, and also the effects of stress. Now, what if you could experience those benefits without being locked into any type of recurring subscription like some of the other continuous glucose monitor programs out there? With my Blood Sugar Savvy course, you'll get exactly that. You'll receive access to 7 engaging learning modules, 2 continuous glucose monitors to start your wellness journey, plus 4 weekly one-on-one video strategy sessions with me where I'll personally guide you to understanding your CGM data. We'll work together to identify your unique blood sugar patterns and create customized strategies for better energy, mood, and overall well-being. Oh, and by the way, this is especially crucial during your peri- and postmenopausal years. Blood Sugar Savvy is about understanding your body on a deeper level, implementing practical strategies, and gaining sustainable knowledge to support your overall health and wellness. Ready to get Blood Sugar Savvy and take control of your metabolic health? Healthy Buzz listeners can save $30 simply by using the code BUZZ at checkout when you enroll at bcw.bcollectivewellness.com/Blood Sugar Savvy. That's bcw.bcollectivewellness.com/Blood Sugar Savvy. Don't forget to use that code BUZZ at checkout for your $30 savings. Your personalized blood sugar journey starts now. We talk a lot about bacteria in the gut, and I know there's good bacteria, bad bacteria. Could that also be contributing to somebody's acne presentation?
Definitely. Small intestinal bacterial overgrowth is something that could be happening. So that's just showing that the small intestine, which should be very low in bacteria, there's an overgrowth in there. And the bacteria that should not be in there are in there. So that's very common if, for example, you get bloating or gas soon after eating, which is pretty often people with gut issues. So that can definitely also, same thing, sort of that inflammation of the gut leading to acne showing up on the skin. Maldigestion of food is another thing. So if the food isn't getting digested properly, you're missing out on a lot of the nutrients that are important for skin health, important for detox. So all these pathways that healthy skin requires just aren't being supported because of all these gut issues.
Yeah. And then all these things together can lead to something called leaky gut. What is leaky gut? Because I know that term gets thrown around a lot in social media, influencers, all different people, but what actually is leaky gut?
So in your gut, it's a very, very thin lining, and there's tight junctions in there that should be pretty tight, and all they're letting through basically is nutrients and water. What happens is they kind of get too wide, those spaces become bigger, and then when you eat things through that lining, undigested food particles can get into your bloodstream. And you're not supposed to have, undigested avocado particles or chicken particles in your bloodstream. That's not normal. And then your immune system starts to mount a response. And so when your immune system's inflamed, havoc basically happens in the body. And for everyone, it's different. So there's not really a one-to-one of like, oh, you have leaky gut, therefore you get this symptom. It expresses differently in people. For some people, it's acne. For some people, it's migraines. For some people, it's joint pain. Everyone's so different on how it expresses, but intestinal permeability is definitely something that I would say everyone with a gut issue has. So if you come in with bloating or constipation or diarrhea, there's some kind of intestinal permeability happening just because it's so common. I mean, the gut lining is very, very delicate, and the way we live today, it disrupts it. So everything from alcohol to gluten to toxins, all of that will address and trigger leaky gut to start happening.
So I would love to hear what your thoughts are around like food sensitivity testing, because with that leaky gut and the immune response being elevated, and we have these undigested, like you said, avocado or chicken or whatever we're eating, then those being in the bloodstream mounting this immune response, then we have these food sensitivities beginning to develop. And it's so controversial in our space on whether or not to test for food sensitivity. So I'd love to talk about that a little bit more.
Oh, I know it is controversial, and I have sort of differing opinions on it. I think it's a case by case basis. So especially if I've seen blood work of a client and we see that something like eosinophils is elevated, which is a type of white blood cell, that's showing us that there is potentially some kind of allergic component to how they're reacting. So if I see that, in that case, I definitely will often want to test for food sensitivities because maybe there's something going on. So that's one case where I would want to do it. If someone, for example, if they feel like they react to a lot of foods, we'll do it. I overall like to run food sensitivity testing, mediator release testing, just because it is showing inflammation in the body. And if there's something that they're eating very often that is causing an inflammatory response, we do want to know, what if it's a healthy food like lemons or chicken or broccoli or whatever it might be, and they're eating it all the time. And just taking a break from it, letting their immune system rest. Also, sometimes just between practitioners, it's a good way to get clients to be motivated to cut out the foods we don't want them to eat. Because when I see dairy, gluten, corn, soy, they pop up really often in these food sensitivity tests. And sometimes a client just needs to see that on a piece of paper and be like, okay, crap, I do need to avoid these things for a couple months just to let my immune system rest. So if anything, that's the benefit of it too. I just like people to see like, okay, there seems to be some kind of trigger there with dairy or gluten or whatever it might be. Let's give your body a break, reintroduce after we've done some healing to see if it's a food you can tolerate.
Yeah. Is there anybody that you would not do a food sensitivity test on?
I would say anybody who struggles with some eating disorder history. That's one, just because if we have to be very delicate about elimination, strict diet, then we don't want to introduce more stress. But that's the main reason I would say I wouldn't want to do it.
Yeah, same. I do the exact same as you. Like it's definitely case by case basis. And if somebody has history of disordered eating, or they already have a very limited palate of like foods that they enjoy eating, the last thing I need to do is like take more things away from them. And so we have to think about the overall picture of how this could impact each individual person's journey. And I'm sure you're the same, but I also don't do any food sensitivity testing unless I'm doing a GI map. I always do them together. Stool testing, for those that don't know what a GI map is. I'm doing a comprehensive stool test with that because just having the foods is only a piece of the puzzle, and it's not addressing like the root cause as to why those food sensitivities are manifesting.
Totally agree. Yep. I think as a standalone test, which is so often what they're advertised at, you can get like the Everly Well and all that stuff that's sold online, which I would not recommend any type of test like that. You could order to your home, but even more so, standalone, they're really not going to do much. If you have leaky gut and you eliminate 20 foods and you keep eating another 50 foods, you're going to develop sensitivities to those other 50 foods at some point because your gut's leaking, your immune system's freaking out. So yeah, gut healing is definitely something we want to be doing to seal up the gut lining so that you don't continue mounting an immune response.
Yeah, exactly. So we got to still look for that root cause. The root cause is not the avocado. The root cause is something else going on in your gut that is causing your body to be angry every time you eat avocado.
Yeah, totally.
So for women struggling with like adult acne, they're oftentimes bombarded with like conventional treatments and topical medications. So when a client comes to you who's been on that journey, who's tried all the topical things and nothing is really working, what do you work on with them when it comes to like mindset and how you're shifting on really addressing things from the inside out?
I would say that the women who do come to me, that's what they're looking for. They intuitively know that these are just Band-Aid solutions, the creams, the prescription medications, and they start to get oftentimes other issues, or other issues are still lingering, like gut issues. It's like, okay, well, my skin's better maybe, but I still have constipation and that's not helping. And the medications are adding all sorts of side effects that are scary. So they're usually motivated to look for the root cause and do this work that isn't an overnight fix. So they know it's going to be months and months of a commitment, which they're ready for. And, medications, I think they definitely have a time and a place, especially with something so delicate like your self-esteem when it comes to acne, being a woman, having like really painful, embarrassing breakouts when you're an adult. I totally support going on medications to just be able to function in the world while we work on the root cause. Some women like to do that. Some women are like, nope, I'm not going to touch that stuff. So I definitely work with a variety of all sorts of women where they're at in their health journey.
Do you see that sometimes a skin condition can get worse before it gets better as you go on their healing journey?
Yeah, I think so. And, I don't know if the purge is the right way to say it, but definitely in the beginning, we do sometimes see things get worse. And I think part of it is that just detox pathways, because what is acne? How is it related to the skin? It's your skin's way of detoxing. Skin is one of the detox pathways. So your poop is a detox pathway, pee, the air that you breathe out, you're sweating. So all these ways are ways to get rid of toxins. And if those pathways are burdened, your body has to get rid of stuff somehow. So it's going to come through the skin. So when we're doing these cleanses, when we're starting to work on fully digesting, getting the liver working, I don't think it's abnormal for the skin to kind of purge, release a little more toxins, and then start to heal.
Yeah, having those open detox pathways is definitely going to be part of the protocol that we're recommending for you is like, hey, we got to make sure that you're pooping every day and we got to make sure that you're able to sweat and that you're drinking enough water because we need all of these pathways open to allow the toxins that we're going to stir up. When we do an eradication protocol, we stir everything. I think of it like a snow globe, right? And like we kind of go in there with some of these eradication things and it's like somebody took the snow globe and shook it up and everything gets real angry in there for a hot second before it starts getting better.
Yep, definitely. And we'll see other things come up in the beginning of a protocol, like more headaches. It could be weird bowel movements for a while because of, that exact reason. You're stirring all that shit up that's been hiding in there and your body has to release it.
And some of these different microbes that we discussed can create something called a biofilm, and we can start poking holes in those biofilms. Do you want to talk a little bit more and elaborate for the listener about what a biofilm is?
Yeah. So the pathogens in our bodies are really smart. So they're good at hiding because they want to live inside of us and feast off of everything that we have to offer. So biofilms, you can think of it as almost what plaque is on your teeth. So it's this layer that's protecting the microbes underneath, and they're really good at hiding. So oftentimes when we probably both work with clients who have done like herbal eradications or they've done these things to get rid of the pathogenic overgrowth, but nothing happened, it's likely because they weren't using a proper biofilm disruptor, because you have to break up that film that the pathogens are hiding under before you can actually get to what's underneath. So if you're just throwing eradication agents without breaking down the biofilm, very likely you're not actually getting to the pathogens. You're not actually killing them off. So the way we've set up our protocols is very oftentimes using a biofilm disruptor to be able to really get into the root, get into that bacterial colony or whatever else it might be hiding.
Yes, exactly. We got to get to the root cause of the root cause, right?
Yeah.
It's like, there's so many layers. It's just not one simple step. And there's just not one supplement, unfortunately, that can take care of everything. It's usually a pretty curated protocol that we're creating for our clients, depending on their specific needs, what their test results show, and what their symptoms are. One of the things that you mentioned earlier is that we should be looking at our poo. What should we be looking for when we're looking in the toilet when we go?
Yeah, I know. I'm always so surprised when people say that they don't look at their poop. I'm like, oh my God. It's like, I look at it every time. Well, a couple of things you want to look for. Well, definitely undigested food. And, corn, that's one that people say they have. That's not something to worry about. I mean, corn, maybe chew a little bit more if you have undigested corn, but that's a normal thing to have in your poop. I'm more concerned about things like bits of lettuce, like tomato skin, other pieces of food. If you can recognize what you ate the day before, that's a sign that likely your enzymes aren't as robust as we want them to be, and you're not chewing your food as much as you should be. Because like you were saying, mindful eating, really getting into that parasympathetic state before eating is a massive part of digestion. Digestion begins really in the brain. So we really need to focus on that. Another thing you want to look at is whether your poop floats or sinks. So floating might just be high fiber. Could be that you ate a lot of fiber, but it also could be an undigested, unabsorbed fat in your stool. So especially if you've had any gallbladder issues, for example, gallbladder removal, if you feel like fatty foods affect you not so great, anything like that. Or if there's like a film around your poop, like there's like, you could literally see like your poop looks greasy. That's definitely a sign to look into your gallbladder, liver health to make sure that your fats are getting digested properly. A couple other things I would say in general, if it leaves a mark on the toilet, same thing. Like you don't want your poop to like leave a lot of like skid mark type of things on the toilet, because again, that could be greasiness related. So those are kind of the main things that I look at for poop health.
Yeah. And I would also say like the texture and the appearance of what is in the toilet. We want something that is like soft and formed like a banana. It should be formed. We don't want like something that's very watery. We don't want like soft serve ice cream in there, but we also don't want little pellets that are really hard to pass as well.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And going every day. Conventional digestive health says, 3 times a week is fine. I'd say at least once a day is what I would consider
3 times a week.
Amount. I know, that's what like conventional gastroenterologists, it's only then maybe considered constipation. So no. It has to be every single day, at least once a day, to make sure that you're clearing those toxins, whether it's for hormone health, whether it's for skin health, because that's how you're getting rid of your hormones. Estrogen is getting pooped out of you. All those toxins. I mean, your colon is a major way of your body detoxing.
And then that has an impact on your colon health. You got to have things moving out of your system to reduce like disease potential that could develop by not pooping every day. So everybody, please go. Yeah. Go multiple times a day, 1 to 3 times a day is what we consider normal. What about transit time? People can be going every day, but they could still have very slow transit time. So what is a typical transit time that you look for?
I think now off the top of my head, is it around 12 hours that we want? Now I can't really remember what I like to have it as. Is that what you like to look for?
Yeah, like between 12 and 24 hours typically is what I'm kind of shooting for. Maybe 36, but like really thinking about from time that food goes in to time that food comes out, right? Because this is one big, long, continuous tube.
Yeah.
And we got to make sure that things that go in come out in a timely fashion. Otherwise, it could sit in there for longer. And that stool, like we talked about your toxins being reabsorbed, hormones being reabsorbed. That's how we detox hormones, is through our fecal material as well. Just increases disease potential for not moving things through. Then also we could have an overgrowth of bad bacteria that can feed on that stool that's sitting there for too long. So one way that I will tell clients if we're kind of wanting to see what transit time is eat a couple of beets and see how long it takes until you see beets in the toilet. You're not going to see the actual beet, but your poo becomes kind of pink, purplish, reddish color. It's not bleeding.
Yeah.
Bleeding is a red flag. If you have blood in the stool and you're not on your period, that's definitely warrants a visit to your doctor to talk about what's going on with your gut. But we kind of want to monitor what that transit time is to make sure that you are clearing things efficiently from your system.
Yeah, definitely. I like the beet trick too. That's a good one.
And if you don't like beets, okay, you can eat corn.
Yeah.
You can do it with corn too.
Yeah, right.
Beets are really good for your liver health too.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So we've talked a lot or kind of hinted around different tests that we like to do. So you and I both are very science and data driven to help get our clients really good results. So with personalized testing, what tests are you doing with your clients to address their gut health, which then is going to have an impact on their skin health?
So with any acne clients, the main test that I like to run would be the GI map stool test and typically the MRT food sensitivity test. And so that gives us a really good path forward on what we can do to address gut health, reduce inflammation, making sure that they're absorbing their nutrients, making sure their gut microbiome looks good, making sure their immune system of their gut is good. So we really want to check all those markers to understand what kind of foods we want to recommend, what kind of lifestyle changes, supplements, all of that. So gut testing is definitely my priority. If we do gut testing and there's still lingering symptoms, maybe related to hormone imbalances, only then might I consider some kind of hormone testing. But it's definitely the foundation when with most clients, it's plenty just to do the GI map and MRT food sensitivity test.
Yep. I love the GI map test. I use that one on 99.9% of my clients for sure.
Yeah.
What does it look like when somebody's doing like a gut healing protocol with you to focus on acne? Are there certain areas that you're focusing on in that besides like just, hey, this is going on in your gut?
Detoxification is a really big part of it. So really supporting detox pathways. So eating the foods that we need to get the nutrients that our liver needs. All sorts of things like cruciferous vegetables are really good for detox, bitter foods to support bile flow. So things like arugula, radishes, if you can handle dandelion greens, I prefer dandelion root tea. So all sorts of foods like that are a big part of supporting detox. And then avoiding things too. We kind of don't want to only talk about all the things to add. It's also the things to avoid. So avoiding the toxins in our life. So everything from scented things to non-organic food, because the reality is that pesticides are a really big burden on the detox pathways. So as much organic as feasible, available, looking at body products, and especially with skin. I mean, oftentimes women who have acne have really sensitive skin. So we do look at their body products. We look at their skincare. I'm not an esthetician, but I, have a general understanding of skincare. And I always like to direct women who are struggling with skin to holistic estheticians to work on that at the same time, because that can be super helpful just to get an assessment of your skin, because an esthetician will know what kind of products might be best for you. And so we talk about as healthy as possible, as natural as possible from that. So a lot of that work too is part of what we do. And then the nervous system support. That's such an important factor. It's not just physical. We really need to talk about emotional health. We have to talk about stress. We have to talk about joy. Are they happy with their lives? Do they have hobbies? Do they have a social network? Are they getting out in the sun? All the things that we've sort of lost in our modern day that we're not really doing anymore or prioritizing is little things like that seems so silly, of like, getting some morning light in your eyeballs, watching the sunset, grounding, putting your feet on the earth. It's like, this stuff sounds so woo-woo, but it really is things that we've just lost touch with as humans in modern day.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when we think about like all of the toxins that we are exposed to in our environment, and like really having the focus of like, how is the environment maybe impacting gut health and impacting skin health, impacting hormone health. Those can be big time dysregulators. And then the impact stress can have on the body too. And that nervous system, like you talked about, like so important to address. It's not just always the supplements. The supplements do work, but we have to address lifestyle, diet. You can't out supplement a lifestyle or a diet.
Right. It's kind of the whole concept of green medicine, right? Where it's like, okay, well, I'm not taking medications, but I'm just relying on a shit ton of supplements. It's like, well, that's not a solution either. But the supplements that we're recommending are very much therapeutic. It's not forever. It's like a short-term protocol to really allow your body to get into that healing state, give it an extra oomph, and then you're able to rebalance so that you don't rely on a bunch of supplements. But yeah, nervous system work, all the other work is just as important and a very massive piece of the puzzle to a healing journey.
When you talk about a protocol, and you just mentioned that it was a short-term protocol, what does that typically look like for clients that you're working with? How long are they working through a protocol to address maybe the imbalances in their gut and how that's impacting their skin health?
So a total amount of time that I usually work with acne clients or gut clients would be 6 months total. And the way it usually looks is, for the first month, we're working on foundations. So we're working on nutrient-dense diets, we're working on their sleep, we're working on getting sunshine, stress, all that kind of stuff. So just kind of getting your body into a more healthy state. And that's usually when we run testing. And as we wait for the test results to come back, then about for 3 months is when I go into a more intensive protocol of supplements that are therapeutic according to whatever the GI map showed up with, avoiding certain foods for 3 to 6 months, depending on the severity of the reactions. So usually at 3 months is more an intensive time for the client. So higher supplements, avoiding more foods just to let your immune system rest a little bit. And then towards the end, the 5, 6 month mark, that's when we get into the transition period, maintenance period, getting off the supplements, maybe going on long-term supplements, just like wellness supports, figuring out the diet that works for them long-term. So it's definitely not an overnight fix. And I don't think the people who work with us are expecting that. They've learned the hard way that there is no magic pill. There is no secret solution. It takes work. It takes time, because it took a long time for your body to get there. And it's going to take a long time for your body to heal.
So the foundations piece is such an important piece of the puzzle that I find a lot of people want to skip over, because they're probably like, I know how to chew my food. I know how to eat nutrient dense foods. I can do that. But like, let's skip to the next part. Why do you still focus on that foundational piece?
Until your body is in a place where you're not stressed, your nervous system is balanced, you really cannot heal. And acne, there is a pattern with the clients that find me. They are type A, driven, super dedicated, high achievers, And yeah, exactly what you said. For them, it's like, what, chew my food? I don't have time for that. I don't have time to not multitask while I'm eating. I got to do my working lunch. And that's all stressing out your nervous system. And until your nervous system is in a calm state, you are not going to heal. Whether it's gut health, skin health, nothing can improve. So it really is foundational. It's not sexy. It's boring. And it's, for some people, the hard work. They're like, give me a supplement list. I'll do it. Give me the diet. I'll do it. But for them to sit down and meditate for 20 minutes a day is like absolute torture.
Yep. They want to check the box if I took those supplements, but checking the box of like, I did some self-care is going to be really hard. And it's like, yeah, I need your lunch to be at least 20 minutes where you're sitting, you're chewing your food, and you're like, 20 minutes? Who has 20 minutes? I'm like, you do.
Yeah, exactly.
I promise you. Look at what your day all entails. Where are you spending 20 minutes that maybe is not adding to your life, or maybe subtracting from your life? Maybe a little bit too much time on the doom scroll over here. Maybe removing some of that so you can actually focus on some of these foundational pieces. And that's where you're really going to see the needle move. Yes, the supplements are going to be a big part, but the things that you build these foundations are things that you will continue to do way after the protocol.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, it takes time. But that's when I ask clients at the end of our time working together, I always ask, what are the habits that you're going to stick to after we're done? And so often it'll be like the chewing food, the taking a couple deep belly breaths before eating. They poo-pooed it in the beginning and they're like, holy crap, this works. This is important.
Yep, exactly. I would love to talk a little bit more, if we could go back to the blood sugar piece, because I find that this is especially for millennial women who are going now through perimenopause, and we can have a little bit more of a blood sugar roller coaster as estrogen levels start to decline and our cells are less sensitive to the effects of insulin. So can we talk a little bit more about blood sugar, how that impacts the skin health, and what things you recommend for supporting blood sugar with your clients?
So the way that blood sugar is related to acne is when we eat foods with a high glycemic load, it impacts insulin and makes insulin go up. And then insulin is related to androgens. And androgens are those male hormones that affect sebum levels. So high insulin basically equals high androgens, which will make your skin flare. So we really want to get the insulin under control, and insulin has to be under control by having your blood sugar under control. So not having crazy peaks and then having your blood sugar drop and all that. So really what we're looking for in clients is making sure that they're eating high protein. So high protein is a massive portion of it because high protein is going to keep your blood sugar stable. And not that carbohydrates are bad. Sometimes we swing the other direction and women think they have to go keto to get their blood sugar under control. That's not at all the case. Women need carbohydrates. Complex carbohydrates are awesome. Things like starchy vegetables, especially lower sugar fruits. Those are all awesome to include in the diet. So just making sure that you're balancing your plate properly, healthy fats, sufficient protein. I would say, if you had to have a number of like how much women should eat, I'd say at least 100 grams. Like, I think at this point, non-negotiable that women should be shooting for 100 grams of protein a day. And for a lot of women who are active, who are wanting to build muscle, preserve muscle mass, especially as they're aging, definitely 100 plus.
Yeah. Blood sugar is such an important piece of that puzzle, and protein does have a huge impact. A lot of people don't realize that, and they also don't realize how little protein they're eating. Do you do any type of calorie or macro tracking with your clients?
I like to avoid it unless they're really wanting to lose weight. Because at that point, it doesn't have to be forever, but at least a couple of weeks of macro tracking. So understanding how much protein they're eating, carbs, fats, fiber, calories, because the reality is you do have to keep all those in check in order to lose weight. So we will do that. And nobody likes to weigh their food. It's so boring. I mean, I do it once in a while just to remind myself of what I'm eating. It's always a very interesting educational experience. So if anyone out there, try weighing your food for a week. It'll be very eye-opening because we definitely overestimate things like protein, underestimate things like especially fats, which sometimes women who kind of lean more paleo or try to eat more nutrient dense is like, holy crap, you're eating 140 grams of fat a day. And that's kind of excessive for most people. So I think macro counting can be a really good tool for those who have specific goals.
But she's not going to let you do that until you do your foundations first.
Exactly. Yep, totally. Yeah, that's not going to be helpful if you're coming from a poor quality diet, standard American diet. That is not at all what we're going to be focusing on. We're going to be focusing on nutrient density, whole foods first.
Yeah, absolutely. So finally, like a huge part of the work that I think you and I both do is really validating women in this experience. And I feel like so many of the clients I also work with are very type A, very high achievers, and they finally feel validated when they get their test results that show that, hey, we have something to point our finger to be like, and this is what we're going to address. The chronic acne can be so emotional, it can really erode somebody's confidence. How are you supporting your clients when it comes to like navigating the emotional side of the healing journey?
Oh, that is such a hard part of it. Things like affirmations, talking about mindset shifts are important. It's hard for people, especially type A people. They don't want to think of affirmations. They don't want to do the work, but like the placebo effect is real. How you talk to yourself, the thoughts that circle in your brain every day, they become your reality. So really having to break those cycles, those negative thought patterns, the limiting beliefs, all that stuff is definitely a part of what we work on. And it's hard. That coaching part, it's hard work.
It is. And I can find too, I don't know about you, but I find that with a lot of my clients, when they get to about the halfway point of through their protocol, all of a sudden a ton of negativity will shift in. And they're like, I'm not seeing results fast enough. I'm still having these symptoms. This isn't working. This is too hard. And that's why you work with a practitioner 101 who can be your accountability and walk you through that negative mindset that you have and help you shift to like, wait, hold on, pause. Look how far you've come. Like, remember where you started? That was just like a couple months ago when you weren't pooping every day, or that you were having really bad acne. And now yes, you might still have a little acne, but it's improved, or you weren't sleeping, or you were feeling puffy in your clothes every day. So
yeah, it's so easy for them to forget how bad things were. I don't know if you ever do symptom surveys or anything like that, just to have a good comparison of like, hey, look at this 2 months ago. You rated that, an 8 and now it's a 2. It's still there, but it's so much better. So that's such a good tool for us practitioners to use to just reel them in and be like, you don't even remember how bad things were. And it was just like 2 months ago.
Yeah, I even had a client once who was like, I forgot how bad I felt until she ate some food that we had eliminated. And she's like, I just wanted to try it. And then she's like, whoa, I felt awful. I forgot that I felt that awful every single day.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. That's why, they need us for cheerleaders. Exactly. Accountability, support, all that. It's helpful to work with a practitioner. I work with practitioners all the time because doing your healing journey on your own just isn't the same.
Yep, exactly. Is there anything else you want the listeners to know about acne and the correlation with gut health? Anything you want them to know?
If you struggle with any skin conditions, whether it's, acne, eczema, rosacea, just a reminder, it is your body telling you something. So it is that flag that it's waving. And it's not just a skin condition in the end, which is unfortunate, but it is something else, something deeper. So I'd say, don't panic, but when you're ready for it, when you have the mental space to work on it, it's going to be like a lifelong change. This isn't just like an outside condition. It's really a deeper problem. So I'd say once you're ready, work on it, because it'll be amazing how many other things clear up. Like symptoms you didn't even realize were symptoms. You're like, holy crap, that doesn't happen anymore. And I had no idea it was connected to the acne and my gut and my liver and my stress and all that.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, this was such a wonderful conversation. I'm sure everybody has found so much value in the things that we talked about here. Where can people find you and connect with you?
My website is Table to Crave, and that's my Instagram handle as well. I do have a quiz on my website for finding out what might be triggering your acne. So all those things that we talked about today, liver, stress, blood sugar, gut, like which one of those things is most likely your trigger? So that's a really good test to take in case you're struggling with acne.
Oh, that's amazing. We will put that quiz in the show notes so people can go and check it out, take the quiz, find out what path they need to go down, and then Dina can help you navigate the next steps. Thank you so much for today's conversation, Dina. This is really, really insightful.
Awesome. Thanks, Brandy.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Healthy Buzz. I hope this conversation has left you feeling seen, supported, and ready to take the next step in your health journey. Love what you heard? Make sure you subscribe to Healthy Buzz so you never miss an honest conversation. And if you found this valuable, please take a moment to leave a review. I truly appreciate it. For exclusive weekly tips and holistic strategies, be sure to subscribe to my weekly newsletter. The link is in the show notes. Remember, this isn't just nutrition, it's permission to trust your body. I'll catch you on the next episode of Healthy Buzz.